Hello, it's Tom again, and in this video we're going to be talking about custom exceptions. So to get started, I've actually started a new class for you called the diceRollOutOfRange.cs. So we can open up that one. And you can see it's at least set up for you, a partially coded class here. Customized exceptions can be handy. So if the default exceptions that are part of .NET are not really doing it for you, you can create your own that have special customizations that might be handy. In this particular case, what I've decided to create was an exception called dice roll out of range. So in the very unlikely event that when I roll a dice, I end up with a nonsensical value, I want to have this type of exception handle that, or not so much handle that, but represent that. So yeah, creating a custom exception in C# is pretty straightforward. You just inherit from exception, or of course, yeah, that's the easiest way of doing it. And then you just add to your exception any of the customizations. So what I'm going to do is, for my customization, is I'm just going to add an actual property to represent what the dice roll actually was. Okay, so I have a private read-only field, which is a dice object called my dice roll, and then I have a public property that goes with that only has a get. Okay, so I can find out what the dice roll was, presumably the dice roll that actually caused this, the dice object that caused this exception is kind of the idea. I'll create a couple of constructors. The first constructor is pretty straightforward. It just takes in a dice object and sets the property, the dice roll property, to whatever that parameter object was. Okay, so that's the only way my dice roll is actually going to be able to get a value. And then I'll do another one that represents, if I want to add a message to it. So there's no message property defined in my class, but there is one in the base exception class, so I can make use of that. So for my constructor, I still have the dice, but I've added a string message, and then I'm just initializing using the base constructor for exception, passing that parameter through so the message gets set. And then again, I'm just doing the same thing I did in my other version of the constructor. So a very, very simple little class here representing, a problem with the dice roll. Okay, and specifically, I'm suggesting that it's an out of range dice roll. All right. For the next step, we'll go back to the dice class and we'll actually make use of this this exception. Okay, so I'm going to go to the roll method. Okay, our roll method's getting rather long at this point, but at any rate, underneath the comment that says, right after you roll the two dice, right underneath the comment, there's a comment, I should say, that says validate rice. Tongue-tied again, 2 videos in a row. Oh my gosh. Validate roll value is what I'm trying to say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some validation here and throw an exception if the validation fails. Okay, so if the value of the dice roll, after we've established what die 1 and die 2 is less than minimum times 2, or the value is greater than maximum times 2, then I want to throw one of these dice roll out of range errors. Okay, so throw new dice roll out of range, and then I'm using the constructor that just takes a dice object. I don't want to just say this. I want to make a clone of it, just to make sure. I guess it doesn't really matter, but just to keep the things separate. Any rate, so it's this memberwise clone as dice, or I could have just said this, I suppose. Any rate, now this is impossible. I can't actually demonstrate this happening because it's, I haven't made this error. So to simulate this particular problem, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just, where I'm actually establishing what the two dice roll are, I'm going to change one of the ones. Let's do it for the die 1. I'm going to change it from a 1 to, let's do a 7. Okay, so let's just pretend this was a typo in our code. Okay, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, but um, I want to show you the actual exception firing off. Okay, so with those changes, let's go ahead and run the program. Okay, I got one right off the bat. Exception of type events and exceptions dot dice roll out of range was thrown. Got one right off the bat. Again. Okay, got a little bit further this time. All right, this is what I wanted to see. I was worried there. It does, in fact, work some of the time, but then, of course, it was out of range. Now, this is not, it tells us that this type of event was thrown, but I'm not making use of the custom exception at all. Let's modify that. So I'm going to go back to my program class in main. So I'll scroll up to main here. And you can see here I've got a catch block that catches a generic exception and just writes the message. What I want to do now is I want to add another catch that will catch my custom exception. All right, move this out of the way a bit here. Okay, so I'm catching, and this has to come before exception because it's more specific. But at any rate, yeah, if it's a dice roll out of range exception that's thrown, I'm going to call that the dice exception. What I want to do is I want to display the message, and then I also want to display dice roll. That's that special information I'm sending with it. Die 1 and die 2, so I can actually see what the roll was that's supposedly invalid. So I'm going to go ahead and run that again. Okay, so this time I'm still getting exception of type exceptions dice roll was thrown, but I can see the actual dice roll now. So I can see somehow I got a 10 for that first die, which doesn't make any sense. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to my dice class again, and I'm just going to make a slight modification to my throwing of the exception. I'm actually going to copy it so I can still see it. I'm going to make use of the second constructor, the one that actually allows me to set a specific message. Okay, so the dice, and my specific message is going to be whoa. Okay, it doesn't make much sense, but we'll actually see it work. So I'm going to run this again. Okay, and it's just a little bit cleaner output here. Whoa, this doesn't make sense. All right. So, you know, if that was happening, then I would know to go ahead and debug that. But again, it's kind of a little bit artificial. I'm trying to show you how to set this up, but it's a pretty unlikely error to happen. Okay. Oh, I just turned it off. That's why. There we go. But if I made it something smaller and ran it again, my exception will happen less often. So it took 22 rolls to actually get something that was out of range. So that is the custom exceptions, which concludes this particular tutorial. Thank you very much.